Hey everyone, Karen the Warp Spinster here. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. Today I want to start a new series. Well, actually we started the new series last time with the Princess and the Pea, but I got to thinking, wouldn't it be kind of fun to try to do some quilts that are related to fairy tales. So I made a list of some of my favorite or some of the best known fairy tales and started writing down some elements of each of the stories that might, and it's really not essential that you see all of these, but that might be used for quilt motifs. And it's not meant to tell the whole story, etc. But I'm thinking it would be kind of fun to have a quilt that's Find the Fairy Tale in here. So we've already done Princess in the Pea. Someone did comment that it was a stack of mattresses. Indeed it was, but we're really not finished with that. So she suggested that there be something to represent all those mattresses, and I agree, yes, and there will be at some point. Hansel and Gretel, Jack and the Beanstalk, which is what I'm going to look at today, the 12 Dancing Princesses, which is one of my favorite fairy tales. I still haven't figured out how I will do that, but Rapunzel, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Emperor's New Clothes, Little Red Riding Hood, and I didn't include the Three Little Pigs, but I think I might actually even do that next week. So it will be, shall we say, probably a challenge for people to to find the fairy tales in it. But I like using this as a stepping off point for coming up with some cool designs. So as I said, I think I want to look at Jack and the Beanstalk this week. And it will be a variation of what we did last week with the curves, which actually, you know, we're kind of a leaf shape. So we did two halves here, and then actually we shifted things over, and then this was the pea. I'm sorry, I didn't take down names. I didn't write down the names to recognize you specifically this time, but I am reading all your comments. Thank you. Suggested a smaller circle, which I think would certainly be appropriate to the story and the concept that it was this little tiny thing under layers of mattresses that she felt. So point taken. Someone else, that may have been Michelle, and I remember that because it's the most recent one that I read, suggested it looked like an oyster with a pearl in the center, which I think is really cool too. Someone also, maybe Jan, I'm not sure, asked if there was any reason that I had done it this way instead of that way. And it's a fair question. I did think about that before I did it. I did mention it in the video, but there was a glitch in the video, so it probably got taken out. There was a reason in my brain at the time, but that reason turns out to really not make that much sense. So yes, I would have lost less down here if I had started down here and then added going up instead of the other way around, where I started at the top and then moved down. So yes. Okay, so back to Jack and the Beanstalk. Here's my thought. This looks like a leaf to me, yes? So what I think, actually I like it this way as a leaf, so we could use this for Jack and the Beanstalk too. I wonder how many fairy tales we could bring this kind of shape into. Interesting. But let's try a little different take on it this week. We may find out this is the one we like better. And what I would probably do in that case is I would want to represent the magic beans somewhere. I don't know where, but somewhere, because, you know, circles it could be. But I'm thinking if I do two halves like this and then run a wavy line, like a bias strip up as the stem, then that could be a really interesting sort of vertical piece on the quilt. Princess and the Pea is going to be horizontal, of course, but I think it would be kind of fun to have that vertical bit with different leaves on it. So that's my plan, and I want to do something a little different that's kind of a mix of this and my Roots and Branches quilt, which I guess is on my brain because I'm prepping for an in-person class on that. So let's see where we go with this. Keep these together. Thank you again for all your comments. I really love hearing from all of you. So let me gather together some black fabric and some other, there will be brights again, maybe prints. We'll see what we come up with. And, you know, maybe a black and white stripe in there somewhere. I have raided my scrap bin and stash and got plenty of black and then a variety of solids. And I will be incorporating some prints into it, but it will be more of the cave style fabrics, I think. Now, the plan is to do some wide strips of, say, in this purple, and then do diagonal strips through it. They might be curved, they might be straight, and different diagonals. They don't have to be parallel to each other. And then we're going to subcut those into the arcs that will fit into the black background. That's the plan. We know how that sometimes goes here. So I'm going to start out by cutting a strip of this, and I'll cut this one fairly wide because it's going to be, you can tell this comes from my stash, it's going to be the first one. So we're going to build from top down this time. So it needs to be fairly wide because I'm going to be making other cuts within it. Which is all right because then I'll have some smaller pieces of this to use in a different leaf, is my plan. So I'll start with that, and then I'm just going to do some diagonal inserts with strips of prints. Do I want to use the same print for each arc, or do I want to mix them? Let's start with the same print, and we'll see how we like that, and maybe some will mix and some will just use the same print for each of the diagonals. And I'm going to say maybe 3 diagonals, you know, the rule of 3 thing. So I have 3 strips inserted in here. I intended to do 2 straight strips and 1 curved. This, when I did the cut, I was thinking, all right, I want to go a little more that way. I wanted it to be a little more that direction, and it ended up being a curve, but it worked out fine because it's a very gentle curve and it's a very narrow strip, which makes it easier to maneuver. So I did another one down here on that one. So now this is going to be the outside part of my leaf, and it's going to be a fair amount of curve there, shall we say. And I'm going to leave this part, sorry, leaning on the table. The curve went fine, no problems. I'm waiting for the camera to adjust. All right, now it's got the color a little better. So now I want to leave this here because I'm going to be trimming again, and that will give me more to use in another leaf. But I am going to have to be cognizant that the edge of the black is here. So I'm going to trim those bits off. So I'm remembering that. as I do the next one. And I don't know yet what color that will be. What do you think? I'm almost thinking, may not be enough of that blue to do. Yeah, that'll be fine, I think. Maybe do a blue. And then, I don't know what. We're just playing, so I will start with the blue and do basically the same thing. I'm just going to add in, wow, is your stash as messy as mine? Probably not. Then I'll just add in 3 strips across it and we'll do a curve. You can see that because I added in this wedge shape here, it starts to curl, and I knew it was going to do that, and I'm fine with that. Ideally, it would have curled this way, but I'm thinking about the veins, so to speak, narrowing as they go toward the outside of the leaf. That would have been a smart thing to do on the outer side of the leaf, but we're going to see how this goes. If I weren't trying to mimic that, then this would be the better way to cut it because I've got the curve already started. Let me think about, maybe I want to do that anyway. Since I don't have a huge amount here to begin with, again, I'm going to cut this curve off camera because you don't want me bumping into the camera or my elbow into your face. And I want this curve to be contained within this purple. So maybe about there. We'll see how this is going to go. It's so far not the way I was picturing it in my head. I mean, I'm doing it the way I pictured it, but it's not necessarily being the way I pictured it. All right, so going to cut the curve and I'll be back. So we are going to have a small sliver of this purple, probably a smallish sliver of this blue as well by the time we get to here, but we can always cut this on a curve because remember we're winding that through. So the key to losing less here is to have this strip wider than I've been cutting it in relation to things. So we'll keep that in mind. I'm going to stitch that on, and then the next piece I want to cut more like that. It's going to be a steeper curve, but I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just sew this and then we'll come back and do this final one, which probably will cut into both of these because you can see that I'm down to a very narrow bit here. So I'm going to want to cut into that so that you can see this inner piece. So now I can do a piece that cuts into that curve. But we're still running low here. So the other thing that I can do would be to take a longer piece and cut it across so that, now I have to go over here, so that we widen that out. I'm not sure that's the color that I want to use, but maybe it is. And that then will give me more space over here. Do it this way. And I can always add in another layer of things if I want. Or I can do one that doesn't have any veins in it. I think I might try that. Maybe, maybe not. I'm gonna ponder it. You don't need to listen to me ponder. Here's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this to widen the leaf out here a bit and give me more room here, and then another piece with a couple of veins in it inside of that. We'll see how that goes. It's probably going to be a funky leaf, but wouldn't be the first time we've done a funky thing, right? So in this case, I'm probably going to leave some more of that blue showing and a very gentle curve, maybe even an S kind of curve, and then put in another one. I don't know how this is going to go, folks. Time will tell. Well, this could make it kind of a pointy at the leaf, at the tip then, right? That we're going with that. Okay. All right, so we bought ourselves some real estate over here, and this we know we want to go up into a point anyway, and that's probably how may not need to be that far over. So we've got some room to work here on another one to go up there. And I'm almost thinking kind of a short pink one. It's going to be a mighty steep curve, isn't it? Well, how about this one? Will be a more sedate leaf. Sorry about all these threads. I will clean them up. It occurs to me that I should have looked up to see actually what a bean leaf looks like. I haven't grown beans in a long time. Depends on the beans, right? All right, so I'm thinking maybe this color. And do we want to cut into this a little bit and then back down? But that means we lose a bunch here, right? If this is like a puzzle, it comes up here and then down here, this is going to taper off anyway. So I could start it like here and have it be a slanted piece. We could insert a black and white stripe in here just because, you know, but I'm thinking that our windy thing might be black and white. So I'm going to give this a go. Hope I don't thoroughly mess this up. If I want it to go like that, then it's really going to cut in up here, isn't it? And down. So it will come up, say here, and then make a curve up there. All right. Fingers crossed. You were probably shouting, but Karen, haven't you forgotten something? And indeed I did. So I added in a strip here. It's still an odd number. It's not just about 3, it's about an odd number. And I did a little trimming here just to show how that might work as a leaf shape, although I think it's going to be probably more like this, or even a curve on the tip here as if it's curling. So, it's okay. You were probably also screaming because I actually was wanting to build from the bottom up, not the top down, which is what I did last time. So I'm sorry I didn't hear you shouting that at me until just now. But I have heard it now. So the next one, I will start by doing this inner first piece first and then cut out from there. And let's see what we end up with. I mean, this is okay, but I'm hoping that, I don't see, we could keep adding in these pieces. And it wouldn't be a leaf shape, but we could have waves or mountains or anyway. Okay, so I'm going to cut another piece of black, and I will start off and show you the first curve that I'm going to cut, and then from then on, I don't know, that I'll come back for a little update now and then, but you don't have to follow everything I do, considering you're probably just fast forwarding through half this stuff anyway. And then curl up there. All right, we'll give that a go. All right, so in the interest of continuity, I am going to use an outtake, an outcut from the other side, and make that the inside curve. And give myself a little room, extra room on the black here. And I'm going to cut this off screen so you don't get an elbow in your face. All right, first part of our leaf. Those of you who have a good relationship with spatial relationships, unlike myself, have probably been shouting at me this whole time to raise this up so there's some margin of black under here instead of having this further down than the black. Of course, because when you're taking up the seam, then it's going to move. Anyway, all right. So course correction. Now we want to do another one that's going to do, I don't know, whatever. I want this to kind of be a more squat kind of part of the leaf, half of the leaf. So I'm going to need a large enough piece to fit in there. So some of my stash won't work. I could do this color next. I don't have enough green to really do anything, but we are moving into a larger sized realm here. I do have some yellow, which would brighten things up considerably. We've got that color again. I might introduce some yellow just to perk it up to go along with that green. Although green's cool color and yellow's warm, but whatever. And then I'll do some strips maybe out of this. So we'll tie in the pink and the purple and the green. So that will be my next cut. I will do a strip. And I don't have to do 3 sections on this leaf. How many did I do that time? I did 4 that time. So again, I will cut a strip, put strips into it, and wait a minute. No, I think I'm doing all right. It's this spatial relationship thing. People, I'm telling you, it's bad. It's really, really bad. So if this is the other side of that, then I'm thinking about which direction I'm turning the pieces here. Now see, that's going to look more like a leaf, right? Right? Although I've got the tip in a different place. It doesn't have to be. It could move this way at some point. Yeah, I'm going to need some yellow in there. In fact, I'm not sure, but what I don't want to do just yellow. Is that going to be too bright at the edge? Well, we're going to do it and see what happens. That's what we're about here. And make it wider over there. No, because we want that to be the point, so we're going to make it narrower. Spatial relationships. I'm not good. I am not good. Well, this could actually be the end of the leaf with the stem there, and then this coming out. I'm just going to piece it however it comes out. I will follow this general direction. It'll be fine. We're improving. We're not creating templates for a quilt, right? Okay, so I'm going to do a strip of this, insert some strips of that, and we will carry on. I decided I'm going to piece this one with a gentle S curve, so I'm cutting the curves together. So I will go ahead and sew this curve, then come back, cut another curve, and sew that piece on. So first step is to sew this seam. So I'm going to mark my starting point. Maybe white's not the best choice. Let's go with this one. Again, convex up, needle down, go slowly, lift the fabric over, stop and adjust as you need to. Side step here for a minute. Someone had asked to see the back side of how I'm doing such narrow curves. So I'm stitching this just as I would any other curve with a 1/4 inch seam. If I wanted to press it toward the yellow away from that seam, then I wouldn't worry about how wide the next seam was going to be or how narrow this strip was going to be, because I'm going to press it away from it anyway. This one, however, I want to press toward the print, and I want it to be a pretty narrow strip. So this is a 1/4 inch seam, but I could go in and trim that down to, say, around 1/8, maybe a little more than 1/8, and then cut my next seam, sew that one probably with a 1/4 inch still, because visualizing that helps me to know how wide that I need to cut that. So I could still cut the 1/4 inch seam, or sew the 1/4 inch seam, and trim that down so that when these get folded together, they're going to be able to one fold on top of the other one, so that I don't have all that bulky stuff going on. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll show that to you. Oh, I like that curve. All right, so this time I'm going to put this on top so I can gauge the width. And I've got a 1/4 inch seam to do yet, so I don't want it to be too narrow. So let's say about there. And it doesn't actually have to be, let's see, this is going toward the outside of the leaf, so I want it to taper that direction, probably. So this is going to get thrown off, but we'll live with it. And I'll make it narrow up here, and then I can kind of show you what I do on the back. So I'll just cut that curve to match. Though I could, of course, cut another curve however I like if I don't want it to be that same general curve, but I think I will do this. Sorry that I ended up doing this on yellow. It's going to blow the color out on the camera here, but if you'll see here, now down here it doesn't matter because the seam's going to fold in fine. It's got plenty of room, but up here, because it's narrow up here, I trimmed the seam a bit up here. First, because I'd already pressed this. So as I sewed this, I didn't want to be sewing in, catching that seam in this seam. And since I trimmed it, now when I fold this seam over, even though I haven't trimmed it yet, then it's going to overlap that fold over nicely and not going to have to fold over part of this seam too. They're just going to fold over nicely. Now, because I don't want this to shadow through, and it's going to here, I'm going to trim that seam a little bit so that it doesn't shadow through onto that side. So in review, if you are pressing it away from a narrow seam, it doesn't matter, because they're not going to run into each other on the underneath. But if you are needing to press it inside so that it doesn't shadow through here, then you need to pay attention to whether or not you want to trim that seam in the back. And don't trim it so narrow that it's not going to hold. But you can still trim it from a 1/4 inch and it will be fine. So then you have a nice curve and you're not fighting bulk up here. All right, and then you can see I trimmed this a little bit, and as it comes down and gets wider, then the two seam allowances are overlapping, but they're not, one isn't turned underneath the other one, so works out just fine. I really like that combination. Isn't that kind of pretty? All right, so I've got 2 more to put on here, and then we'll proceed to adding it to the other. All right, a new piece to cut a curve for, and we're going to lose a bunch down here, but that's all right because that will give us a piece to use in another leaf. All right, this is our leaf, and so we want this here, and I shall cut a curve, sew it, and we'll see where we're at. Yes, you're right. I don't know where my brain is. So, I did not cut what I wanted to cut, but I'm actually, so this is why I didn't do it from the bottom up, but I am going to do this as a narrow, starting out maybe as a wider strip for black and then a narrower strip, wider strip of black over here to a narrower piece, and then put this in. That will work. I love improv because you have happy accidents, which, you know, other people would call mistakes, but we're calling them improv discoveries, and a tenuous relationship with spatial relationships, because then you stumble on something that you like. I really like having that black in there, like we had the black and white stripe in last week. I'm really liking that. And this curve that we cut out of turn, that I cut wrong earlier, then we can add that on and we'll have the other half of our leaf. So let me sew both of those curves. Here is this part of the leaf, and I really like that black strip in there. I might next time make it a little narrower, but I still like it. And then here is this side of the leaf. And I think that's kind of cool, actually. But we want to have a winding thing going up there, don't we? Like, oh, I don't know, maybe a black and white stripe, maybe? So we might do something like this. This is just for visualization purposes. This is not in any way ready to apply to anything. Had another piece. And then I think I might want it narrower. And it could be a wider stripe, could be a narrower stripe, could be a straight stripe instead of a bias cut stripe. But overall, I like the concept. And I really like this being offset of that one. This almost looks like the stem, so maybe we need to have, I don't know, because green then would throw that off, wouldn't it? Anyway, something to think about. Let me know what you think for this center spine or the vine, and what you think about everything else for that matter. Anxious to hear your thoughts. I'm thinking that I like this, but I think we need, as we're going up the quilt, so remember this will probably be pretty vertical, although individual leaves may be closer to horizontal. We'll want some smaller leaves. And of course we have those pieces we've cut off from the inside of these. So it could go into that. I gotta find a different piece. Let's try something else here, and then we'll be finished for the day. All right, I had to go down and cut a strip of the tent stripe. That may be too wide a strip, but it will let us do a little more curving around. Maybe too wide. All right, let's I don't know, let's what? Okay, because of this curve, I almost want to put another piece on here so we can finish that leaf shape out a bit. And maybe another piece of green here to bring that through, and then a narrower piece of this maybe. So I'm going to add a little green on here. Yay, improv. And then see where we're at. So I have added on some green here, and there's quite a bit of it, so we've got lots of options for how far down we move that. For now, I think I'll put it up here. I also added black strips on either side just so we'd have more room to work with outside the leaf. Then I also cut a narrower strip of this. And again, this is just for visualization purposes because it's a bias strip, but it's not a bias tape. So I think it needs something. It may be that this strip needs to be a different width or that the stripe needs to be a different width, but I think I like that, and it's good that we have this black piece in here. I like that. Kind of wish we had one in there. So I think that's it for now. It hasn't been incredibly long for you, but it has been hours and hours for me at my end, and I need to have some lunch, mow the lawn, and finish quilting a quilt. So that will be it for this week. I look forward to your comments and your suggestions about how this might have been done differently, or what you think about this being in here, what you'd like to see for this spine. And next week, we'll either do some more with Jack. You know, don't you think this needs like something else, like a ladybug or spider or something? Well, anyway, so next week we'll either do more with Jack because, you know, bean pods. We need to figure out some bean pods to go with this, don't you think? Because I have no idea if this is what a bean leaf looks like. Or maybe we'll start on another fairy tale. Let me know what you would like to see next in the fairy tale, either from the list that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, or if there are some other fairy tales you would like to include. Grimm fairy tales are really grim. You know that? Wow. Well named. So, I know it's the Brothers Grimm, but they really are grim. That is it for this week, finally. And I hope to see you next week. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.